Winter camping. As far as we're concerned, it's kind of an accident if we end up doing winter camping. There are those people who love to camp in the snow. If you're one of them, leave a comment below and tell us why. Over the last couple years, we have learned a lot about RV winter camping.
Let me start by saying that when we first started venturing out with little Dash, we showed him our Texas Freeze video and he was not impressed. So Dash came up with a little list of his own favorite tips that he thinks that you all should adhere to. Right, Dash?
Step number one when you're winter camping, Dash, is to be prepared, right?
It's very true.
And that points to Miss Leslie, our member's first question about what do we do to prepare when we know the temperatures are going to get low? And what temperature do we start changing things? And that's really where you come in.
Exactly. So if, let's just say, for instance, you know unequivocally there's a snowstorm coming in, right? So those preparations are going to be a little more exhaustive than you would, let's just say, if there was a cold front coming in just for the weekend and then it was going to disappear, right? So if you know you had a snowstorm coming in, there are some certain things that you know you absolutely have to get done before it hits. And one of those things is making sure that you have propane.
One of the things I wouldn't have known before we started RV camping is where do you actually get propane? So our favorite place to fill up our propane tanks are at the campgrounds. From our experience, about 90% of campgrounds have on-site propane fills.
The propane is important for several reasons, obviously. Not just because you need it for cooking and things, but obviously because you need it for heat. Most RVs have air conditioning units with heat pumps, right? So that's an advantage because you can use your heat pumps to heat your RV without the use of propane. And the problem with that is that it draws, warm air from the outside. So when temperatures drop below, let's just say, for instance, 30 degrees outside, those heat pumps in your AC units, they're not going to do as good of a job or hardly any job. So you're going to be, not forced, but you're going to have to use your propane systems, whether that be a, radiant heating system like we have or a furnace, some sort of furnace.
And a lot of people have external furnaces that they plug in.
Buddy heaters. That's another very good one. You've got a buddy heater with a small tank that doesn't require power. Our radiant heating system requires a little bit of power. So as you can see in the Texas Freeze video, when you lose power, the radiant heating system, unfortunately,
doesn't work very long.
Doesn't work very well. Yeah.
When you're RVing, you need to get really, really familiar with what's happening with the weather, no matter what. Whether it's winter camping, even during, spring, summer, and fall, there's inclement types of weather that can happen no matter where you are.
Yep.
So get really comfortable with weather. Do you have a favorite weather app?
I use AccuWeather. You've got Apple, obviously, or Droid, whichever phone system, operating system you're using.
Droid? Like Star Wars?
Android, yeah, exactly. So those come with kind of the default, temperature notifications. But, finding another one like AccuWeather, I've got one called Windy that was recommended by one of you. He was a truck driver, so he let me know about the Windy, which lets me know about high wind situations. It's definitely important to have a good weather app. It's also important to have, an emergency radio type system. That's another thing that we have that, when there's an impending storm, we have, plugged in and ready to go. It has a battery backup, so we've got like a weather radio, and we can get notifications even if we completely lose power, which is important.
And you can find that on our Amazon store, right?
You can, exactly.
So if you're looking to see more about some of these items, we actually have an Amazon store which has really quick reference links for you. It's amazon.com/shop Wanderlocal.
So if I see that the temperature is going to drop below 30. I know 32 is freezing. If it's going to drop to just 30, not that big of a deal because it's not going to be sustained at 30. It's typically just for a handful of hours in the early morning or, throughout the evening. So not too much to worry about there. But if I see that's going to drop into certainly the 20s, I'm going to take some additional precautions because at that point, things do start to freeze.
Well, and that's a really good segue to the next thing. One of the things with winter camping they're always thinking about are what can freeze, and water is the obvious first.
Yeah, so there are heated hose systems that you can purchase. They're a little bit pricey. I think some of them come in the range of like $150 or so. We have never opted for a heated hose because I just don't want to travel with extra crap, to be honest with you. So we do something completely different. What we do is, instead of using the heated hose system, what I do is I fill the fresh tank. And the reason I fill the fresh tank is because the one thing you want to do if you don't have a heated hose is disconnect your water line, because those things will burst.
We have seen so many instances of nights after freezes at campgrounds where the trash cans are legitimately filled with popped filters.
Those inline filters, exactly.
Yeah.
So everybody thinks about, the water freezing in the hose, but nobody ever considers the inline filters and the filtration systems, right? So they just
take those off.
Yeah, they typically, people just leave them outside in the freezing cold, and then we've literally seen them burst. So that's a consideration as well. So just because you think your hose may be able to withstand the temperatures, your inline filter may not be able to.
And filling your fresh tank is a really good point, because we didn't realize that. And that's actually a really helpful tip no matter what kind of inclement weather you may hit.
True.
There are a lot of people who actually fill their fresh tank at least to some percentage on a regular basis. If you're one of those people, leave a comment below. What percentage or how much do you fill up your fresh tank? Because I'm really interested in that. Some people will talk about how it helps their unit actually tow better. But what's great about it is it's a great backup water resource just in case water goes out.
So one of the other things I do is I drain all of the tanks. And, well, why wouldn't you, right? We have tank heaters, which is great, but a lot of RVs don't. So you have to think about all the stuff that's going to sit in your gray tank and your black tank as well. So what I basically do before an impending storm or cold weather, encounter, whatever you want to call it, is I drain all of my tanks.
Well, because frozen poop is worse than
frozen
poop.
Yeah, I guess it's better than warm poop, but yeah, frozen poop. Nobody wants frozen poop in the tank. Yeah, exactly. So
everything in RV life comes back to poop.
Every RV conversation somehow finds its way to the poop. This is one thing that Dash said that was very, very important that we did not do in the Texas freeze, and he laughed at us for quite a long time. It was pretty embarrassing. But you also want to make sure that you're filling your truck tank as well, because there's a possibility that the gas stations will lose power. And if they lose power, you're not able to swipe your cards. You're not able to, fill up at the pump. There's no power, right? Yeah. So fill up your truck in advance. And another thing that Dash mentioned that we did not have during the Texas freeze is Dash was like, did you have 5-gallon tanks? And I was like, yeah, we didn't have 5-gallon tanks.
When you mean 5-gallon tanks, you mean extra gas, extra diesel.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. So we have some extra 5-gallon cans that we filled. I've got the diesel truck outside, so keep that in mind if you have a diesel truck. And this is going to lead to our next step as well. Generators, you're going to need 2 different 5-gallon tanks. You're going to need one for your diesel fuel and then one for your regular gas.
So, generators. Right before the Texas freeze was the very first time we had ever used our generators, and that was an experience in and of itself. So, tip number 1 about generators is that if you've never used your generator, do not wait until you are in a winter camping situation for that to be the first time.
Yeah.
I would really honestly suggest it not be the first time when you are on a little island in the middle of the bayou in Louisiana and you actually need them. So
that's true.
Prep that is something that you do when you don't actually need them, so you know how to work them.
That applies to generators. That applies to pretty much everything in RV life. And get some practice and experience with the entire rig and all of its systems, especially generators. And generators are something you're going to want to run routinely anyways, and keep them well maintained. And if you're not using generators over a long period of time, make sure you use some sort of fuel additive to prolong the longevity of the fuel, because fuel does go bad after a period of time. We have 2 2,000-watt inverter generators. One of the things that we did that was a huge mistake that we, sort of looking back, not the best idea. We ran both generators at the same time, which means we were just blowing through gas when gas was hard to get.
And you don't have to do that. We could have easily just run one generator at a time.
I got 2 inverter generators because they're small, compact, they're quiet, which means your neighbors aren't going to be, hating on you.
Obviously, during an extreme situation, I don't think anybody's going to care about generator hours.
Sure.
But generator hours are typically during the morning, when you're supposed to run them, is best camp etiquette.
Yeah.
But
I would think at nighttime, I would say you'd want to turn off your generators by 9 or 10 at the latest.
On a normal day.
On a normal day.
Not when you're freezing to death.
No. When
like
you're
in the Texas freeze. That would
be
silly.
It's just pure survival at that point. But yeah, you would basically take your 2 inverter generators and you run them with it's called a parallel kit, and then you can run it to your RV. Now, the only time you would need those is if you needed to power a ton of stuff. Like, for instance, with
our
us,
air conditioners.
Exactly. Now, we've added soft starts to our AC units, which allows us to power the AC units off of the generators very easily without risk of damaging them.
We have a 50 amp Airstream.
We have a 50 amp Airstream, and then some RVs are 30 amp as well. We could very easily power our air conditioning unit off of the generators, but we would need 2 of them in parallel to be able to do that. You just need the 1 generator and a little bit of power to power that heating system, the radiant heating system, and we would have been fine. Right? Is there something else? Yeah. Okay, so what he's basically saying is that we assumed that we could also use our truck to power the Airstream with the 7-pin adapter, and while it gave us a little bit of power, it is not as effective as somebody just recently mentioned. If your batteries are completely dead, which it may happen if you have a power outage. Yeah, on the Airstream. Right. Just use jumper cables, which we also did not have at the time. We could have just turned the truck around, face Airstream batteries, and jumped the batteries with jumper cables, which seems so silly, right? You've got dead batteries, you have a truck with working batteries. Why not jump the batteries,
oh my gosh,
right?
That's so dumb. I've not even realized that.
I know, right? Thank you, Dash. Yeah, who knew, right?
If you do find yourself winter camping and you have solar and it has snowed, another really good thing to have is a really sturdy ladder, because you're going to want to get on top of your rig and clean the snow off of your solar panels, because we could have gotten more power back to our unit during the days because it was sunny when it was during the Texas freeze, but our solar panels were completely covered.
Thus, the batteries never charged, which is why we were without power for so long. We didn't realize it at the time. I attribute that to being a Floridian my entire life. But our neighbor was like, you might want to get up there on a ladder and clean off your solar panels so your batteries can charge. And I thought to myself, boom. Of course not. Solar panels can get covered with snow and not charge. Now, when it comes to ladders, you don't need like a full-size ladder. We've got a retractable or telescoping ladder. So the full size of ladder is probably, it's probably about this, and it just telescopes out to, it could be 12 feet, 14 feet, right? Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it is heavy though, so just consider that. The telescoping ladders are, somewhat heavier than the regular ladders.
That one? Blankets is what he said. It's really, really important for you to carry some insulated blankets when you're traveling. It's great to have them in the truck just in case you ever had an issue.
There's a lot of insulating material that you can buy. This was brought up by several people as well. We have a Max Air fan. I'll actually show you. And you can buy these little things like this to help insulate, the area where your Max Air fan is as well, to help keep some warmth.
The crazy thing about this is that there's a list that can go on and on and on. There's a million things that you can buy to help with winter camping. It really just depends on how much you're planning to do and how much you want to invest. Because the reality is, in most situations, you can also just do the simple thing and pick up and leave. But the requirement there is that you're really paying attention to the weather in advance. Because like, for instance, with our Texas freeze experience, by the time we realized that the weather was going to be as bad as it was, we literally were looking at the internet reports or the news reports on the internet talking about massive traffic buildups, huge car pileups, and it was no longer
fatalities. It was
it was no longer safe for us to leave. So that's just another reason why it's so important that you are paying attention to the weather when you're traveling. So if you have any other particular questions about winter camping, we've done more of it than we'd like to admit. So feel free to leave a comment below. Dash is pumped about seeing what your questions are, and we're happy to respond. So leave that comment below. Let us know. If you've enjoyed this and these tips were helpful, give that video a big thumbs up, and we look forward to seeing you next week. As always, if you haven't already joined our YouTube family, there are 2 ways to do that. The first and most simple is that if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do that. You can't do it on your phone, or you can do it on your phone.
You can.
But it's easier to do it on desktop.
Yeah, and make sure you hit that little bell. It'll notify you whenever we drop a new video.
The second way that you can join our the second way you can join our channel is to actually join as a paid member. That's how Miss Leslie got to ask us our questions, and we created this video today. So we would love to have you join our family. All of the money that we make from our YouTube memberships goes directly back into the communities as we are patroning local businesses. Which is a perfect segue into the most important part of the day. Make sure that you wander local this week, friend. Because, as you know, it's good for the soul.